Tomas de Torquemada convinced over 10,000 people to confess that their deepest religious beliefs were lies. He didn't just torture their bodies with the Strappado, he systematically destroyed their ability to trust their own faith, their own thoughts, and their own reality. What Torquemada discovered reveals the most terrifying truth about human psychology. Anyone can be made to betray what they hold most sacred. Torquemada didn't target criminals or enemies, he targeted the most devout believers in Spain. Jewish converts to Christianity who were more religious than most Catholics. He needed to prove that faith itself was unreliable, that human conviction was worthless, and that only his authority could determine truth. The Strappado wasn't designed to punish heretics, it was designed to create them. And here's what will shatter your understanding of your own beliefs. Torquemada used the exact same psychological techniques that modern interrogators, cult deprogrammers, and ideological extremists use to make people abandon their core convictions. He accidentally created the perfect blueprint for destroying human faith in anything. Torquemada's genius was targeting cognitive dissonance. The mental pain people feel when their beliefs contradict their experiences. The Strappado created unbearable physical agony while demanding victims maintain their faith in a loving God. When the pain became overwhelming, victims had two choices: continue believing and go insane, or abandon their faith and confess to heresy. Most people chose heresy because psychological survival required it. Torquemada had weaponized the human mind's need for consistency. When reality contradicted belief, reality won apart, and Torquemada controlled reality inside his torture chambers. But here's the most disturbing part. Victims didn't just confess to fake crimes, they genuinely began to doubt everything they had ever believed. Torquemada had discovered how to perform psychological surgery on the human soul, removing faith and replacing it with dependence on his authority. Modern psychology has a name for Torquemada's technique: belief system disruption through manufactured crisis. Dr. Robert J. Lifton's research on thought reform shows that extreme stress combined with ideological pressure can completely rewire someone's fundamental worldview. Torquemada was conducting mass brain surgery 500 years before neuroscience existed. Here's how his faith-breaking factory worked. First, he would isolate victims from anyone who shared their beliefs. Then he created artificial crises that made their faith seem inadequate to explain their suffering. Next came the introduction of his alternative belief system as the only logical explanation for their experience. The final stage was what psychologists call traumatic bonding. Missed victims became psychologically dependent on their torturer for making sense of reality. Torquemada's prisoners didn't just confess missed, they became grateful to him for revealing the truth about their false beliefs. Seville, Spain, 1492. Torquemada's Strappado chamber was designed not just for physical torture, but for maximum psychological impact on victims' faith. The device suspended victims by their arms behind their back, while weights were added to their feet, slowly dislocating shoulders and destroying joints. But Torquemada's innovation was combining physical agony with theological questioning. While victims hung in unbearable pain, he would ask, "If your God loves you, why does he allow this suffering? If your faith is true, why can't it stop this pain? If your beliefs are correct, why are you being punished?" Victims faced an impossible choice: maintain their faith while experiencing agony that seemed to prove God had abandoned them, or accept Torquemada's explanation that their suffering proved their beliefs were false. The physical torture was just the delivery system for the psychological destruction. Contemporary records show victims begging Torquemada to explain why God was allowing their torture. They genuinely wanted to understand how their faith could coexist with their suffering. Torquemada had successfully made them doubt not just their beliefs, but their ability to understand reality itself. After hours on the Strappado, victims would confess not just to practicing Judaism secretly, but to never having truly believed in Christianity at all. They convinced themselves that their entire religious identity had been a lie because the alternative, believing God was torturing them, was psychologically unbearable. Every technique Torquemada used to destroy faith operates in modern systems of belief manipulation, but refined through psychological research and mass media amplification. From political radicalization to religious deprogramming to ideological conversion, Torquemada's faith-breaking factory is destroying millions of people's core convictions. Social media algorithms use Torquemada's cognitive dissonance technique by exposing people to increasingly extreme content that contradicts their existing beliefs, creating psychological stress that can only be resolved by adopting new, more radical viewpoints. The platforms profit from ideological conversion, exactly like Torquemada profited from religious conversion. Political movements replicate Torquemada's isolation technique by convincing followers that anyone who disagrees with them is fundamentally evil or deluded. Once isolated from opposing viewpoints, followers become psychologically dependent on the movement for interpreting reality, just like Torquemada's victims became dependent on him. Corporate training programs often use faith-breaking techniques by challenging employees' existing values and replacing them with company ideology. Workers are taught that their previous beliefs about work-life balance, ethics, or fairness were naive, and that corporate success requires abandoning these limiting beliefs. Therapeutic interventions sometimes accidentally replicate Torquemada's method by aggressively challenging clients' core beliefs during vulnerable moments, creating psychological crises that make clients dependent on the therapist's interpretation of reality rather than developing their own judgment. Instead of the Strappado's physical pain, modern faith breakers use social pressure, economic threats, and psychological manipulation to create crises that make people's existing beliefs seem inadequate. The goal is the same: destroy confidence in independent thinking and replace it with dependence on external authority. Tomas de Torquemada died believing he had saved thousands of souls by destroying their false faith. His victims died believing their torture had revealed the truth about their worthless beliefs. But understanding his faith-breaking factory gives you something his victims never had: the ability to recognize when someone is trying to destroy your capacity for independent thought. The first warning sign is manufactured crisis combined with ideological pressure. Anyone who creates or exploits your moments of vulnerability to challenge your core beliefs while offering their worldview as the only solution is using Torquemada's playbook. The goal is to make you doubt your own judgment and become dependent on theirs. Watch for your beliefs are holding you back. Manipulation, being told that your existing values, morals, or convictions are preventing you from success, happiness, or enlightenment. Torquemada told victims their faith was preventing them from salvation. Modern manipulators tell victims their beliefs are preventing them from prosperity. The hardest part of resisting faith-breaking manipulation is recognizing that psychological vulnerability makes everyone susceptible. Torquemada didn't target weak-minded people, he targeted the most devout believers. Your strength of conviction doesn't protect you from manipulation during crisis moments. Torquemada's victims were isolated from anyone who could validate their original beliefs. Modern resistance requires maintaining relationships with people who respect your right to your own convictions, even when those convictions are being challenged by external pressures. Tomas de Torquemada destroyed the faith of 10,000 people, but he created millions more who learned to distrust their own capacity for belief. His faith-breaking factory is still operating today in every system that teaches you to doubt your own judgment and depend on external authority for truth. Robert Greene warns about manipulation by those in power, but Torquemada's story reveals something more fundamental. The most dangerous manipulation targets your ability to trust your own mind. Your beliefs, values, and convictions are yours to examine and change, not someone else's to destroy and replace. In the comments, share a time when you recognize someone was trying to break down your core beliefs during a vulnerable moment. What made you realize they were exploiting your crisis rather than genuinely helping you grow? Your awareness could help someone else protect their psychological independence. Hit subscribe because we're exposing how history's most effective belief destruction techniques are being used to control your mind today. Every story reveals another way people are taught to distrust their own judgment, and every understanding gives you more power to think independently. Torquemada's victims died, believing their faith was worthless. You don't have to make the same mistake. Your capacity for independent thought is sacred. Don't let anyone convince you it needs to be destroyed and rebuilt by their authority. The Strappado broke their bodies, but the real torture was teaching them to distrust their own souls. Make sure no one ever convinces you that your mind belongs to them.